All right, everybody. Welcome to the Contextual Christian Church Bible Study, where today we're going to read Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 to 13. I'm going to pray it in. Everybody, bow your heads. Father, thank you for getting us on this Bible study as we're going to end. We're going to end Daniel, and we're going to get the last bit of context for chapter 12. I pray that this Bible study is a little bit easier. Separate from the Bible study, I do want to pray this real quick. Thank you for allowing us to be in the positions that we're in to start to give back into the church fund as well. Thank you, God. I appreciate that. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. So as Charles said, we're gonna end Daniel. I don't know why he wants to kill Daniel, but we're ending Daniel, I guess. No, meaning we're gonna finish the book of Daniel. So what we had gotten into last time was we had gotten through Daniel chapter 11. We finally finished that up. And as we went through it, we started off with reading about the ones that are faithful to God, how even though they were going to be at the end times, that even though they were going to be faithful to God, that they were still going to fall, as in not fall away from God, but fall as in like being taken out by the ones that were not faithful. And then there was going to be some that we had read prior to it that were going to fall as in like death, some into slavery. There was multiple ways. But what we started to get into last time at the beginning was not only there was going to be some that fell away in those ways, but many of them would actually cleave or cling to or join with, in other words, the ones, as I said, them with flatteries, which, as we read from the time before, we're talking about the smooth talkers that were joined up with the vile being that was able to deceive so many. In other words, there was going to be a lot of people that joined with that false church after having to deal with hardship. And so we got into about how that king, that vile king, was going to exalt himself and magnify himself above every god. And we went into a whole bunch of depictions that, for one, as it pointed out, that not only was he not going to have any regard for the God of his fathers, but he was going to have respect and honor to the God of forces. Now, as we got into at that point, how they can't be the same God, we saw the God of their fathers. That's a reference to the God of God, King of Kings, the Judeo Christian God, Yahweh, or God the Father. And so we see that he was having respect for a false God, but not for the one true God, while sitting here claiming himself to be part of it with the smooth talking. And we went into a whole bunch of depictions that just kept on lining up time after time with the Catholic Church. Now, obviously, there is a possibility of a 0.0 type percent chance that maybe it's not talking about the Catholic Church, but we can't give it that possibility realistically because so much aligned with it. And then we even got to the point where was it? He's going to enter into the glorious land and many countries are going to be overthrown. And he brought up how he was going to take over these countries, but not through battle or anything, the study before last study, but it was going to be through that smooth talking, which is why they were able to take over so much. And then he's going to overthrow the treasures of gold and silver and take over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. They're going to be close by. And then finally, we got into verse 44 and 45, where it pointed out that there's going to be things coming, tidings coming out, or news coming out of the east and out of the north are going to give him some problems. And they're going to go ahead with a great fury, a massive attempt to try to destroy and to utterly make away many, or so to like take them out. And he's going to plant tabernacles or places of worship between the different seas in the glorious holy land, holy mountain, which there's only one that we've read about in the Bible that's a holy mountain, and that was Mount Sinai, where Moses had spoken to God. And then, as it points out, but yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So he's going to be successful in all these different situations. But don't worry about it, because he's still going to meet his end. And that's where we finished up with chapter 11. And I'll go ahead and switch it to our first section so our first reader could read in chapter 12.
All right. I'll be reading Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 to 4. Real quick, Matt, before I start reading, when you were doing the summary, sometimes I could see your feet.
Oh, my bad.
It's all good.
But Charles, as I've told Thomas before, you need to speak up. If I don't know something's going on, how can I move it away? Like I'm holding the phone. You should have said something.
So in that moment, I should have cut you off then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we supposed to, I mean, it's time of studying. We're supposed to be focusing on my feet or focusing on the Bible.
You're focused on the Bible. I just.
No, but I'm saying, like, when somebody's watching, is that going to be something they're going to be able to focus? Or is it going to be a distraction?
Part of the distraction.
So you should have spoken up. Always speak up when there's something of importance, and raise your hand if you need to. Because I am looking at the screen so I could see if the hand is raised. But at the same time, if it's something that's that blaring, like it's interrupting something, then you gotta put it out. You gotta say it.
All right. We go back to the
Go ahead,
Bible
Charles, when
app.
you're ready. Yep, in verse 1 through 4.
Give me a second. Verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. So starting off, now starting off with Daniel standing up as a great prince, standing for the children of Daniel's people, just standing up for those that follow God. And after that semicolon or colon, it talked about there's going to be a time of trouble that wasn't like what happened in the past, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. So it's talking about a trouble that hasn't even happened yet, like a trouble that's not like the past and not like something that's going to come in that time period. This is something totally different, a totally different troubled time. And it talked about in that time, the people that follow God will be delivered. So everyone that shall be found written in the book. Now, this goes back to that book of life. If I'm wrong, let me know if I'm wrong. Those that are written in the book. Yeah, Revelations 20. And now in verse 2, and when it talked about the people that sleep in the dust, that's just another way to say the ones that already died and buried. The ones that died that were buried on earth, when they get up, you got some that'll get up for everlasting life, the ones that follow God, go to heaven. And the ones that have everlasting contempt, the ones that did not follow God, like fire.
Now, what does that show or prove?
That now we're talking about the end time. Or is it something else?
Something else. Something that's not part of the section. There's an ideology that this either debunks or approves. What is the idea?
Oh, you talking about the once saved, always saved? You talking about that one? Okay.
Well, this doesn't show anything about once you're saved, you're always saved, or not.
Yeah, because it didn't talk about any of the works in it. It just talked about who goes and who doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let me give Thomas a chance. Thomas, what idea or teaching does this debunk?
The idea that once you die, you automatically go to heaven or hell.
Exactly. That's what gets debunked by this verse. Good job, Thomas. That was a good catch. Seriously. Good job. Now, Charles, do you know how it debunks that?
With verse.
Don't-
Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I was gonna say don't forget to unmute, but then you started speaking.
How does it? Let me reread so I can explain it properly. Many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some. I don't have a way to explain it at the moment. I'm still trying to figure out a way to explain this
All right, Thomas, are
properly.
you able to explain it?
Many of them that sleep in the earth, they're sleeping the whole time and they shall awake. And then once they awake, that's when they are, the decision has been made whether or not they're going to have everlasting life or, yeah.
Exactly. If they're asleep, Charles, have they already passed on? Or are they waiting?
They're waiting. They only did the first death, not the second.
Exactly. If it was instantly, as soon as you die, you instantly time of judgment, then why is it we hear about them at the end times waking up the people who are sleeping? What is that? Means that they had to have been sleeping the entire time up until that last days. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
So by the fact, as Thomas brought up, that they were asleep up until this point, it can't be instant because they were not instantly there. They were woken up. So now, obviously, when we're talking about that, what does that mean? On another side note, what does that mean for people who have died?
Oh, you're asking me.
Yeah.
What else to say other than they're asleep and waiting for one or the other? Everlasting
means
life or
what?
the.
What does it mean to say they're asleep for those that are died?
Well, I brought up that when I brought up the whole sleep term, like they're already dead and buried, but the first death. So in that
Which
first
means
death, they're
what?
just. I'm trying to figure out where you're trying to get at with this.
Well, if it's the first death, then what does that mean?
Sleeping, waiting until this the end time
What's the difference
comes.
between dead and sleep?
Well, don't we always talk about when they use the word sleep? We're always talking about death in that sense. But
No, okay, Charles, I'm asking the same question one more time. What is the difference between death and sleep?
with sleeping, you wake up eventually. With death, you don't get up at all.
In other words, you're still alive. You're not actually dead. So if you're not actually dead, then what is going on with their souls after our body is gone? Our souls are living on. Our souls aren't technically dead. Like we're gone from this body, but we're not dead, is what I'm getting at. So when we talk about Tartarus, when we talk about the thief on the cross, and today you will be with me in paradise, whereas we talk about other side about being in torment and torture. So in other words, there is a torment or like a purgatory type situation for those who are against God up until the day of judgment, and paradise or peace for those that were with God up until the day of judgment. Does that make sense?
Now I see what you're getting at.
Charles?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yep. Because if it's the first death, you're not really dead then. Now the question for people comes in about that first death or second death. Well, if you're dead, then you're not really like you're not alive, you're not here, then oh, it's gone, right? No. Your soul is still living. It's just either alive in paradise or it's alive in torment. That's the difference. All right, go ahead and continue.
Okay. verse 3, and they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament. First off, zoom in. Firmament, strong definition from H7554, properly an expanse, that is the firmament or apparently visible arc of the sky. So just that what it so just bright. Brighter than any lumen flashlight you can buy. That's what it's talking about when we're talking about the wise.
Exactly. A good example of what this is going as to point out is like the sunlight in the sky. They're shining as bright as the sun in the skyline.
And then after that, it brought up, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. That was it.
And they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. Now that's interesting. And they that turn many to righteousness. Now that's talking about, for example, you turning me into righteousness. You turning anybody else into right, Thomas, everybody else into righteousness. Being as the stars forever and ever, shining in this empty void, and you're shining still in it. Then verse 4, but thou, speaking to Daniel, oh Daniel.
Although I wouldn't say empty void. Did it say that it was in the midst of a void?
No. Everybody thinks about like when you think about space and like colors and brightness and darkness, people always like look at like space as like an empty void and the stars are lighting up the space kind of thing.
But you're adding to it something that's not there. It just says that they're gonna shine like the stars. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna shine in the midst of an empty void. Just stars shine as a bright light, right?
Yeah, they do.
So what is this depiction getting into? Is it being like a literal comparison of an empty void and they're shining bright? No, it's
just
they're
them shining.
Shining bright, period. But when you add the empty void, you've now added to the context something that's not there, which also creates a contradiction.
Oh, my bad. Okay, my bad. I wanted to add that emphasis on space and darkness and space and all that. My bad.
Well, here's the problem. You didn't add anything to say that it's a comparison that you're doing. Similar to a light shining in an empty void. That would have made it to where it's a comparison term. Not that they're shining bright in an empty void. When you don't add anything that's a similar word or something showing a similarity, you're adding an instance of fact instead of an instance of comparison. See what I'm saying?
And I'm glad you brought up the comparison word because I didn't really need to bring up anything. I just needed to bring up that they shine. They're going to be shining bright at least.
Well, I think you do need to, because is this literal sounding or does this sound metaphorical?
Metaphorical.
Yeah. So is it possible it's literal that we're going to be literally shining like light? Yeah, it's possible. But is that the most likely contextual meaning of this?
No, metaphorical.
No. It's most likely metaphorical. Because when we see like Moses and we see Elijah when we talked in the New Testament, did we see Moses and Elijah were shining as bright as the sun, or was it just Jesus?
It was just Jesus, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. So we have an example where somebody who had passed on that would be considered one of these bright lights, but they weren't bright as the sun as Jesus was. It was just Jesus that was. So this is most likely not literal. Most likely this is talking about metaphorically that they're going to be so amazing in comparison of everybody else. This is just a metaphor of how much they're going to stand out in people's eyes. That's the most likely interpretation. All right, go ahead and continue.
Verse 4, going to Daniel, but thou, O Daniel, so speaking to Daniel, shut up the words. Now, when it's using shut up, primitive root, to stop up, by implication to repair, figuratively, to keep secret. Shh, don't tell nobody, Daniel.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
don't
what's
tell
happening.
don't tell anybody these words. And seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. That's interesting. Daniel, keep your mouth, not keep your mouth shut. Just be quiet. We'll seal the book. all the way to the time of the end, to the end time. Well, until the book needs to be opened again. Many shall run to and fro. So that's from. So I guess it's adding that point that many are going to run all over the place with knowledge, and their knowledge should be increased.
Yeah, they're going to be running back and forth. People are going to be chasing out knowledge.
While you have the secret, Daniel.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's all I got for verses 1 to 4.
Good. Yeah, that's good. Now, why would it point out, this be as a formal question, why would it point out, Thomas, that people are gonna be running to and fro and knowledge is gonna increase in the same verse as telling him to keep it quiet?
So the first part you asked, I feel it's gonna be because of people are going to finally have their eyes open, and once your eyes are finally open, you're gonna want to know more, and you're gonna try to attain that knowledge. But at the same time, they had that opportunity, and now it's kind of too late until the books are open again.
Good. That's a definite possibility. Charles, can't think of a different one?
Not different than that one.
All right. I could think of another one, obviously. I mean, if I can, why would I say it? That was redundant. But anyways, maybe he is pointing it out because people are going to be continually growing in knowledge to the point that that knowledge itself could create a problem. Not because they know information, but because they don't have context of that information. Take, for example, today's day and age. Thomas, you've heard of some of the stuff that goes on in Daniel, right?
Yeah.
Was any of it in context of what was actually going on in the book?
Could you elaborate? I don't know why I feel.
Was
I don't
there any
understand the
part of
question.
it that when we went through it reading it this time, actually getting the context, did any of the stuff that they claimed of Daniel, did any of it actually match up to what we were actually reading? Partially, entirely, or not at all? Did any of it match up?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Some of it matched up, right? But then here
Yep.
goes the secondary point of that. Did it all match up, or was there some big parts that got out of context?
I can't recall entirely to answer.
You don't remember when we were reading about the beast?
Oh, you're absolutely right. So no, it wasn't all in context.
Exactly. How were people talking about the beast? How they were
Actual beat.
describing it? Exactly. Like actual beasts, like actual animals. That's what they were describing them as. But when we saw it from the context, that's not what it was. The fact is that having knowledge is not bad if you get the context. But you can have so much of a desire to gain excess knowledge instead of actually making sure you have accurate knowledge that you lose sight of everything. Now, Charles, you've never studied the Bible before studying with me, but you've heard people talk about it. How many people have you heard talk about the end times that were not following the Bible at all in their behavior, as far as even you knew at the time, let alone what you know now?
I heard a bunch of people bring up things.
And if you were to give me a percentage, how many of them would you say were actually following the Bible in their lifestyle?
Oh, 0.
Exactly. Knowledge is great to have, but knowledge for the sake of knowledge can be a problem too. I need to know because I need to know more. I need to know more. But you're not even understanding what you already have. Paul talks about this when he talks about people striving, and we haven't gotten to that verse yet in our studies yet, but he talks about how people arguing back and forth over things that should be the simple stuff, that they should be dealing with the meats, but they're going back and forth over the milk as babes in the faith do, not as grown adults. And so the thing is, you can get so stuck on not getting context, so stuck on just trying to get more and more information, that by the time you go back to the information that you should have got the context the first time from, you don't even know what it's talking about. You have no idea. So yeah, that's another reason why they could be bringing up that there's going to be a lot of people going to and fro trying to get knowledge, and there's going to be a lot of people gaining knowledge. It's going to be increased. But that's why I want you to shut up these words. That's why I want you to close it up. Don't just have it out like that. Now, when we think about that, also look into this other part. Thomas, have you heard of people trying to say that there are missing books of the Bible?
Of course.
Charles, have you heard people saying that there are missing books of the Bible?
All the time.
Now, I'll tell you guys from experience, I've actually read some of those books. Want to know why some of them are missing from the Bible? Number one, they were not written by the people that are supposedly named after them, like the book of Enoch. That came out after Jesus was already risen, well after. We're not even talking about prior to it. Came out right around the time of Jesus. But Enoch was hundreds of years before. So somebody else wrote that book, not Enoch. And then you look at the things it approves of and the things it disapproves of. Charles, what does the Bible say about sorcery? Is that biblically okay? Divination,
No,
sorcery?
none of that stuff. No.
But all of that is shown to be done and approved of in the Bible, in the book of Enoch. That's where that problem comes in. Now, as we go forward with this from this section, just keep that in mind. Having knowledge is good, but you got to get the knowledge in context. Don't just add knowledge just for the sake of adding knowledge. That does no benefit to you or anybody else at all. All right. Now then, does anybody have any comments or questions as we go to the second section? Now would be the time to raise your hand. All right, then go ahead, Thomas, when you're ready.
We're reading Daniel chapter 12, verses 5 through 9. Give it a couple seconds. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the water of the river, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the water of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever that it shall be for a times, and an half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. All right, so we have Daniel looking up, and he sees two men on both sides of the bank of the river, and one man on the side of the bank of the river dressed in linen. He ends up saying something. He asked a question. He was like, "How long shall it be to the end of these wonders?" And let me read 7 real quick. And I heard the man clothed in linen.
So what is he actually asking by saying that? You can't just reread it. You got to explain it. What is he actually asking?
Okay, so he's in regards to what Daniel was speaking about, correct?
Yeah, but what was Daniel speaking about? What
His
have we been
vision,
talking about?
and just yeah, his vision in regards to the false church rising up and with soothsayers doing their thing and
Well,
uh
not the last part. What was the last part Daniel was speaking
I was
on?
about to explain it all until then from then to there. Then we have that. Then we have
It says the end of these wonders, right? So when is it going to be finished? So what's the last part we spoke on?
so the last part we spoke on was regarding to the church still doing their thing until Jesus returned and the books were open and people were getting judged.
Yeah, which is what time frame?
The end times.
Not just the end times,
Oh, what
the
do you
end.
mean?
This is all technically part of the end times.
Right.
The latter days, the last days. I mean, technically, we've been part of the last days since Jesus ascended, technically. But when we're going through this, we're not just talking about the end times generically. We're talking about the end of the end times. We're talking about the end of the world.
Okay.
So when he says, how long shall it be to the end of these wonders? What is he actually asking by asking that?
How long, like how much time do we have before the end of the times
Exactly, to the end of the world, to
to the
the
end of the
end of
world?
everything.
And
All right,
then
go ahead.
7, let me read this real quick. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the water of the river, when he held up his right hand and it's okay. And so we have that same guy who was clothed in linen raising up his right hand to the sky, to heaven, the sky. And hold on one second. And swear by him that liveth forever that it shall be for a times and a half. And who I'm gonna get mixed up. I'm gonna get mixed up in this one. It's kind of confusing. I'm not gonna lie.
No, you're fine.
Just a
All right,
heads up.
so when he says that it shall be for a time, times and a half. What does that sound like he's saying?
Forever? Is he like giving an example of forever or something?
I mean, well, that does that sound like it's never ending?
No, no, definitely not.
So what does it sound like he's saying?
I don't know.
Well, think about it. I want you to try to figure this out. I don't want to give you the answer because I think you figure it out.
A time,
A
time, and a
time,
half.
yeah, a time, times, and a half.
I'm stunned. I ain't even gonna lie to you.
Does that sound literal?
No,
Okay. Then what does it sound like? It's not literal.
extra time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if he's saying extra time, what is he basically getting at
Let
generically?
me let me read 7 one more time. And I heard that man clothed in linen, which is upon the water of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever that it shall be for a times and a half, and when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So swear by. So he's raising his hands up to heaven and swear by him that liveth forever that it shall be for a time. And so he's talking about God or Jesus, the only person living forever. And yeah, man, I'm kind of stumped, dude. I'm not gonna lie. This whole Daniel thing's been stumping me.
All right. Charles, give you the chance. What do you think he's getting at by saying a time, times, and a half?
Well, you brought up the metaphorical part, but something way in the, like metaphorically in the future, like way in the future.
There you go.
I would have never
Wait.
gotten it.
Well,
I don't know
here's
why.
here's why I should have gotten it. A time, times, and a half. Think about how if we were to say something similar today, what we would be getting at. Hey, bro, when you gonna be finished with dealing with your kids so we can go to the movies on the weekend? Bro, it's gonna be a little bit of time. It's gonna be some extra time. It's gonna be an extra half time after that. What am I getting at by saying that?
Sometime in the future.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it with any kind of legitimacy if it's gonna be quick, right? I'm letting you know by saying that, right, it's gonna be a while.
Right.
You better just hope it happens because it's gonna be a long time. Like, so the way that you should have been able to figure it out that you weren't doing is you weren't taking it as you're the one speaking it. Remember, I said this is a massive important tool. When somebody is saying something, put yourself in the perspective of the person saying it. Somebody asked you how long something is going to take, and your first response is it's going to take a time, times, and a half. If you would have
Okay.
read it as if you're the one speaking it instead of just reading it like a book, you would have been able to figure it out. But instead, you just sat here like, I don't know what to do. Remember, whenever you're going to understand something, one of the first things you need to do, always, which you do, is try to make sure you have the words understood, make sure you understand the context as like the who, the what, and the why. You need to understand that. Cool. Next thing that you need to do is think about it from the perspective of the person saying it, if it's somebody speaking, and who they're saying it to, how they would receive it. So you need to think about it from the person talking and the person listening, not from the point of view of a book, because the Bible is not, it's not really a book as much it is a script. We're reading a story, but we're not reading a story like Harry Potter. We're more so reading a story like somebody gave us a script for actors to play out. So when they're speaking, you need to think about, if you were to say those words, what would be a situation that you would say, or what would be something you would mean by saying that? And you have to take into account why you're even saying it to begin with. What was the person asking? They asked how long it's going to be. And then your response is, it's going to be a time, times, and a half. Okay, what am I saying by saying that? I'm saying it's going to be a while. You see why I said you should have been able to figure it out, but you weren't actually thinking about it? You were just sitting here stumped instead of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, definitely.
This is something that you do too, Charles. I want you to take this as a lesson too. You both do this. When you get into a situation where you don't understand something, you guys just sit here stonewalled, stupid looking. Like you're looking at something stupid, I mean. Not that you look stupid, different meaning. But anyways, you sit here like you're looking at something stupid. Instead of trying to figure it out, put yourself in the place of the person speaking. Put yourself in the place of the person asking the question. What would be the purpose? Put yourself in the place of the person listening to the response. Think about it from all perspectives. And above all, go back to the context and see if you can figure it out. All right, guys?
Yeah.
Got it.
Then, good. So then we have that where you're saying it's going to be a long while. Now continue with your explanation from there, Thomas.
So it was like it's going to be a long while. And then it also says, let me just read it real quick. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So is it just like talking about the people who are evangelizing? Is that what it's referring to? The holy people?
Well, I want you to think of all the different possibilities it could mean. Is there only one possibility it could mean?
No, definitely not. That's
Okay.
what's on my mind right now.
So remember, this is how do we get the context of the Bible? What's the process?
We'll go back, read, and look up certain words and stuff like that.
What's the process
Okay.
called? There's a certain type of process it takes to get the context. What is the process? I've said it a few times.
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't have it with me.
All right. Charles?
Talking about the
What is the
process of elimination.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
To get the context of the Bible, it's not something you just figure out by like, oh, here's the meaning. No, it's a process of elimination. So the first thing, so after getting that context that we talked about before with the first part, you also have to take into account the context of how many possibilities it could be. Well, look at that sentence. What are the different possibilities you could think of? I guarantee it's more than just one. Give me at least two possibilities, Thomas, for what that could mean.
So I gave you the first one about people
Yep.
evangelizing everywhere, scattered. And then my other possibility was in regards to Daniel closing the book. Man, I don't know, dude.
Okay, I want you to, before giving up, look at what's in the Bible. Look what's in that word. Look at the context. And when he
And
shall have accomplished to scatter the power. Okay, does that sound like that has anything to do with Daniel?
no,
Exactly. So to scatter the power of who? Of the holy people. Okay. So what are the different things that could mean by scattering the power?
to hide
You
it,
said what?
like to hide it.
Yeah, that's one. If you're scattering something, are you trying to have it out in the open and all straightforward like? No. So that's one possibility. Maybe it's trying to hide the power.
Or to
Another possibility you said to evangelize, right? Like isn't going preaching all across the world, reaching everywhere. That's another one.
like
Charles well,
ahead.
that's your two. I want to give Charles a chance too. Charles, can you think of two possible meanings from it different than what Thomas said?
I'm trying to
He
think
said
of what
one was hiding the power, and another was of
the teaching and preaching.
evangelizing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had the evangelizing in my head. I'm trying to think of some more when they're talking about scattering the power.
Here's your hint. What no, I can't say that without giving the answer.
I got another one.
All right. Let me give Charles a second and give him a chance, and if not, I'll go to you. But I'll say this, Charles. Here's your hint. Cause and effect. That's your hint. Cause and effect.
Some of your hints be throwing me off. Because we already got into the evangelizing part. That was as soon as you said cause and effect,
your
I thought about
options
that.
need to be different than the ones that are already said. This is what I told you. So why are you thinking about what was already said?
The cause and effect
Go
part.
back to the verse.
That's the throw off part. You threw me off with that one.
Hold on, Charles. It shouldn't be throwing you off because you should go back and read and think about what would be a cause and effect that relates to that. That's what you do instead of just jumping. Oh my goodness, that threw me off. Look and read the Bible. Does anything in there, Matt, that could relate to a cause and effect? In verse 7, the second part of verse 7.
So we just talked about earlier about I brought up the whole book of life when that opens up. Those going to heaven and those going to lake of fire. We brought up that earlier. Opening that book and all of that.
How does that relate to 7? We're talking about 7, scattering the power, Charles. You're not paying attention, bro. I said that from the beginning. Scattering the power. What are the different things you could mean by scattering the power? Say it again.
Yeah, I don't.
What are the different things it could mean? But you can't think of anything of cause and effect that would relate to it. What happens if you scatter the power, Charles?
Then other people have power.
Yeah. In other words, you're weaker. That's a cause and effect. So what's another possibility that could mean?
So that by the person scattering the power, the person that scattered it is weaker. By the person
No.
giving the power to everybody, that person becomes weaker. You mean in that
Yeah,
sense?
yeah. The person whose power got scattered is weaker. And who's the person whose power, or who's the group whose power gets scattered here?
And when he has shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, people that follow God.
Yeah. So what could it possibly mean as another possible meaning?
God scattering the power to holy people, the people that follow him. And
And
his,
what did we just no, what did we just go into, Charles?
you just gave me that
Ju-
example of scattering the power, and the
Yeah,
person
all
who
you did
scatters
was
the
just
power
say that
becoming
he
weaker.
scattered the power. Yeah. So what would that mean? Who would be the ones that were weaker then?
Why would God be weaker then? He scattered the power.
God
Because the
wouldn't
people
be
that don't follow,
weaker. Who,
the
okay,
people that
Charles.
don't
Charles,
follow would be
pause.
weaker.
Charles, pause. Charles, pause. Did it say God's power was going to be scattered?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to say it again. You need to read. Stop jumping, read. So, with that in mind, if it's scattering the power of the holy people, who's the holy people again?
People that follow God.
In other words, what do we call that today?
Christians.
Yeah, the church. So if the Christians at the church is weak, that would be one other possibility. So the church is going to be scattered, is going to be spread so thin that it doesn't have any power really. You see what I'm saying?
And when you meant the church just now, you meant like the Catholic Church. They wouldn't have the power because we scattered the power
No,
with the
what
Christians.
that's not the holy people.
I know that's not
Is
the holy
it?
people. We're talking about the
So
ones that are
why
getting weaker.
so yeah. It said holy people, the power of the holy people is getting weaker. Why would that be the Catholic Church? They're not the holy people.
So the holy accomplish and scatter the power of the holy people. Oh, okay. No, okay. So yeah, the holy people would become weaker then. That was my bad.
Yeah, you're not looking at the context, you're just answering. You need to start taking a pause when I ask you a question. First off, think about the question. Secondly, read and see what connects. Stop jumping the answer and actually think about it. And stop giving up before you actually try. You're screwing yourself over from any kind of growth because you keep doing that recently. You don't just give up because it doesn't jump to you. Reread, but before you reread, think about the question that was asked. When I gave you the response of cause and effect, instead of laughing about it, like, whoa, it threw me off, look at the reading. How does that relate to cause and effect? Okay, what would be a cause here? And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people. Okay, well, if you're scattering the power, that's a cause thing, right? That's not an effect, right?
Right.
So then what would be the effect of scattering somebody's power? Now, if you think about that, the effect of scattering a power, that could either mean that the power got really stronger or the power got really weaker. Because any power, when it's united together, is it stronger or weaker?
If it's united, is stronger.
Yeah. So if the power is scattered, what would be the most likely effect?
Weaker.
Exactly. So instead of just jumping to an answer, or instead of just thinking all in the ether, and take the exam, instead of just being, oh, that threw me off, take what I said and look at what's in the word. You would have had the answer for one of the possibilities. That he's waiting till the power of the church is spread out, but also weaker because it's spread out so far instead of united. Now, if we look at it from that perspective, that could get into another possibility that is in the same exact answer, but more specific. And that would be people like me and you. We are the ones that have obeyed the gospel. but it's just me and you. Are we sure that there's nobody else like me and you that have actually already obeyed the gospel and are following faithfully throughout the world? No, they could exist. But they're so far and few between, they're kind of scattered about. Do we have any power to come together like that? We don't even know where everybody is. Whereas if we all knew where everybody was, we could come together as one massive worship service. Now, how many more souls do you think we'd be able to reach if we were able to come together like that? You see what I'm saying? So that goes
Got
with the
it.
same answer of the church being weaker because the power is spread out, but it gets to a more specific. But all of that stemmed from, instead of just jumping, instead of just trying to answer, blindly thinking about in the ether, taking what I said as the hint, rereading and looking at each part in a cause effect. There's a couple things you could have looked at. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people. Okay, so accomplished the scattering of the power of the holy people. Well, that could also look at as the scattering of the power is the effect, right? You could also look at it like that, right, Charles?
Give me an example so I can better understand it.
Okay. Accomplished means completed, right? You finish the work.
Right.
The scattering of the power is what was accomplished. That's like me saying, I accomplished driving 700 miles. What was the cause to be able to drive 700 miles? I'm missing the cause there. You see what I'm saying? So you could have looked at it also as the cause and effect with, we're missing a cause here. We're only having the effect. We don't have any information saying how he's scattering the power, just that he will. So that could go into giving us a couple more answers that God wants, or in the future, God himself is going to set up for the church to be divided, or not divided, to be scattered. So now we've gotten another option where it's not even about the scattering of the power, it's about the reason why it's scattered or how it gets about being scattered. You see what I'm saying?
As possibilities you bringing up, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, as the
Okay.
possibility, because that's what we're dealing with here, is we're dealing with the possibilities of what this could mean. And if you just took the idea of cause and effect in relation to verse 7, that goes two possibilities that were not stated right there. One, God is going to be the one establishing for the church to be separated, split apart throughout the world, and not necessarily in a good way. Two, the church could become excessively weak in the future because of the fact the power is going to be scattered. They're both part of it, but they're two separate things. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And both of those possibilities are different than the ones that Thomas said. But all it took was just taking time and looking at the context and thinking about what the possibilities are related to that. And especially with the hint of cause and effect. What would be the effect of the power being scattered? What would be the cause to scatter the power? Looking at just that point on both sides, you already have two new examples of what could be the answer. Now, with that in mind, Thomas, what was the other thing you wanted to add as another possibility?
It's kind of the same thing. I was thinking of decentralized, like decentralizing from pretty much you brought it up. Long story short.
Oh, about the power being split apart and all that?
Yeah.
Decentralized? All right. Now, the one possibility I didn't bring up that was related to it is that the power being scattered, though usually scattered power means weaker power, but it could represent not just the evangelizing, but that each section of evangelizing is gonna be powerful. That it's like you were talking about what Thomas was just brought up. that it's going to be decentralized. It's not going to be all in one unit. Now, if we look at it from that perspective, then if it was one church, yeah, this church that is in charge of everything, that wouldn't really match up with a scattered power, would it, Thomas?
No, it wouldn't.
Exactly. Now, when we look at the Catholic Church as, again, another one that could point to the Catholic Church, if that turned out to be the meaning, wouldn't that negate the Catholic Church as being part of the holy people? That they're not capable of being that based on that context?
Yeah,
Exactly. And how do we know that, Thomas?
because wouldn't they be intertwined with each other, so you wouldn't be able to distinguish the two?
No. So, Charles, I'll go to you then. Why would this, if this idea of the holy people's power being scattered, how would that make it to where the Catholic Church could not be part of the holy people, if that's what it meant?
If that's
If
what
that-
it meant. Sorry for the silence. I was thinking.
You're good.
Would their power, because their power is not scattered like it's bringing up right now. It's really just through them.
In
They don't
what
really
way?
have it like in a way where I gotta bring up a good way to explain this.
It doesn't need some special explanation. It's a very straightforward point. All right. The reason why it would debunk the church, the Catholic Church, as being the holy people is because the Catholic Church is not scattered power. Its power originates to a point, starting first and foremost from the Pope, then down to the cardinals, and so on and so forth. It's all connected as one. It's not actually scattered. It's not actually separated. It's all connected in one thing. Now, if your power is scattered, is it connected, Charles?
No.
No, exactly. It's scattered, separated. So, by the fact that the Catholic Church is one connected body, even to the very beginning of it, stemming down as one hierarchy, it wouldn't work for that because it's not actually scattered. It's not actually put all over the place. It's one base power that connects to many, but it's still that one connected power with a central pillar, so to speak. Does that make sense, Thomas?
Right. So let me see if I got that correctly. So by them being, they wouldn't be as powerful if they were decentralized,
Huh?
is what you're saying. By them being kind of like one unit, that's what keeps them in power, is what you're saying?
No. I didn't say anything about how strong they are. None of what I said had to do with their level of strength. It was their type of power. Their power
Type
is unified. Their power is stemming from one point. It's not
That's
actually scattered.
that was the word unified. That's what I was looking for. My bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
Yeah.
wrong word then. Yeah, because unified does not necessarily mean strong. Like unified just means that it's not separated, it's connected. So with the Catholic Church, it's all connected to one point and it stems down. It's not actually scattered. Now, the people, if you want to say the churches, the church buildings of the Catholic Church are scattered all over the place, you could say that. But the power of the Catholic Church isn't from their different church members. The power stems from the top down. The Pope dictates what's allowed and what's not allowed. That stems down to the cardinals. That stems down to the priests that are called father, that are, well, the bishops, and then the fathers, and then to the people. But if that's the case, is the power actually scattered if the power stems from the top? No. The power would only be really considered scattered if the power is coming from the bottom. Like, it would be different if the Pope was just a connection piece for people to communicate. If it was literally just like a call box type thing where they're all connected, but every building is its own church. You see what I'm saying, Thomas?
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with strength of it has nothing to do with the strength of it, only that their power stems from the top down. The main power of it is still the central pillar. It's
The
not
pyramid, yeah.
actually diverse. It's not actually separated. Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, you want me to
And
finish up?
did that make sense? Well, let me just make sure what Charles understood that too. Charles, did you get that? Yes, then how that works?
With your possibility and the difference between how the scattered side, or the scattered, the holy people, the
No,
scattered side
no, of
versus like
why
the
the
Catholic
Catholic
Church,
Church would be debunked and what it meant by the unified versus the strength. Where Thomas's mistake was just now.
about how the Catholic Church is just one pope piece rather than the scattered piece that you brought up earlier.
Well, okay,
Hello?
I heard you, but the way you said it confused it. Re-say it.
You're talking about it be debunking the Catholic Church in the sense where the Catholic Church is under one rule, one system, where everything goes through the Pope, through all of that. They can't scatter their power. They can't just, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do our own thing. The Pope has to rule. The Pope has to make those decisions for all those
Yeah,
Catholic
there you go.
churches, even though
Yeah.
they're scattered.
Well, they're not scattered.
No, I'm saying even though you
buildings
see a
are-
bunch of
yeah.
even though you see a bunch of buildings, the Pope has to make the final decision. That one
Yeah, the
rule.
power lies at the top, like a pyramid.
Right.
Yeah. Good. All right. Now go ahead and continue, Thomas.
All right, so 89, Daniel hears these things and he doesn't understand himself, so he takes it to God, and God's like, look, the book is already closed, and won't be reopened. Hey, look, the book is already closed, it's sealed, and won't be reopened till the end. Talking to end. That's pretty much it. Daniel tried to go back and get some information. He couldn't even get it. He's like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny too, considering this, because he said like, "Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till that time of the end." It's like, oh, okay, like, really? Like, you gave me the vision. You can't just give me a little more info, please, God? Like, it's almost like having your kid, like you've explained something to your son like 5 times, and he's like, "Britt, just get out my face. You'll find out at some point." Like, that's pretty much what he did.
Yeah.
Like, I got a lot of love for you, but I'm tired of explaining it. Now, let me say this though. There's one thing that we do have to point out about 9. What do we need to point out about 9, Thomas?
Let me just read it one more time. He said,
Mm-mm.
"Go that way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end." True. Is there in regards to God telling Daniel to go thy way?
No, Charles. What do we need to point out about verse 9? I don't know if you guys will figure this out. This one's
yeah, I was
kinda more
about to say I'm stumped on that one. I don't know.
All right. I thought this question would be a little bit more difficult, but I figured I'd give you the chance anyways. It's the seal till the end, till the time of the end. Okay. That's the part that you have to point out. This said it was going to be sealed until the time of the end. Well, Charles, are we at the last day? Are we at the time of the end?
No. Well, we don't even know really when that time was going to come.
All right. Thomas?
Feel like it, but no.
All right. Here's the actual answer. The actual answer is yes. We are in the end times. We have been in the end times, or in other phrases of the Bible, the latter times, since Jesus ascended. That's how long we've been in the end times. Now, we are not at the end of the end times, but we have been at the end times since then. Remember, that fourth kingdom where they had that final part, didn't we already have a church that lines up with that vile person, Charles? Didn't we already bring that up?
Right.
So we're not at the end of the end times. That's true. All the stuff taking place, it's going to be a long ways off from that point. But we have been in the last days for over 2,000 years. So the last of the last days, the very, very end, no, we haven't gotten there yet, obviously. Because for one, Jesus hasn't returned yet. He hasn't had his second coming yet. For two, we didn't have Jerusalem being rebuilt yet. There's a whole bunch of things that have to take place to be the end of the end times. But is it technically wrong, considering the fact we have the words of this book when it says till the time of the end? The answer is no. As we see from here, there's two possibilities that could mean. It could mean till the last days, which we've technically been since Jesus. If that's the case, then did this make a mistake? No, because it was sealed up until the time of the end, or the end times. But there's another possibility that it could mean. What is the other possibility that it could mean, Charles? If not that possibility, it's a different one.
Until the books are open, the book of life is open.
Well, no, it can't mean that because we already have these words, right?
But I thought the book of life part was the judgment. The last day, last day.
Where in verse 9 did it say that it was the day of judgment? The book of Daniel, we're looking at the book right now, right?
Right.
Are we at the day of judgment?
Well, no, but you asked for a
So
possibility.
is that a possibility if the book is already unsealed?
The words
We're
are closed
we're
up
reading the book right now.
What do you mean we're reading the book right now?
Are we not reading the book of Daniel, Charles?
We are.
Is it the day of judgment?
No.
So then it can't mean the day of judgment. That would be a contradiction, wouldn't it?
Oh, then I don't really know then what the possibility there.
Okay. Next time, think about that. That should have been an easy debunk of yourself. You should have never brought that up. You gotta think that through. We're reading the book right now. So it can't be the day of judgment, it means. Otherwise, that's a contradiction, right? Because we're reading it right now. Thomas, what's the other possibility? If not for meaning the last days is what I brought up. What's the other possibility this could mean?
I don't know.
All right. The other thing that it could mean, and this is where Charles was, if he would have had this part, it could have been right, is this is actually not the full thing. This is not the full book of Daniel. We have the parts that are important for us to read at the moment, but we do not have all the words of his prophecy at this time. And the parts that we don't have are still sealed up until the last of the last days, until the end time, the true end times. You see how that's different from what you said, Charles?
Yeah, I probably would have never got that either.
Yeah.
I was nowhere close to that train of thought.
I figured you wasn't going to get it, but I had to give you guys a chance because there's two possibilities it could have meant. One is that cool. We have. I mean, we're literally reading the book of Daniel right now. So either it's a contradiction, or there's two possibilities. One, we still don't have the full information from Daniel. We're missing some stuff, and that's going to come out at the very end, the last days, or the end times, as what we see from the Bible showing the last days actually started from when Jesus was ascended. That was the beginning of the last days. Now, when was the book of Daniel found? That's an interesting point.
Was that a question for me?
No, I'm thinking it.
Oh,
Oh, really? Okay, so the book of Daniel, it was written close to around the time of Christ, like 164 to 167 BC. But it was so we're talking about right around that time. So if we take the concept of this book not being found or not being read until after that time, well, again, we either could be missing some stuff, or it could be talking about at the time of Christ. That's when this stuff got revealed. So both are possibilities to where it's not a contradiction. The only way it would be a contradiction is if all the stuff that he wrote was literally everything he was supposed to write down, and they had it available to them from the beginning and it's not missing nothing. That would be a contradiction. Now, why would that be a contradiction, Charles?
go ahead and repeat that. Go ahead and repeat that, man.
If the book of Daniel is literally everything that he was supposed to write down, and they had it from the get-go, from the time it was written, they had it available. If that's the case, how would what we just read in 9 be a contradiction?
Going back to, let me go back to that. And he said, "Go that way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end." So you're talking about it would, how would it be a contradiction? It would be a contradiction because of that last part, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time's end, but we're reading it. How was it closed up or sealed, but we're reading it? You mean in that sense?
Exactly. Exactly. Now, the fragments of the book of Daniel were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that was discovered in the 20th century. Now, you guys know when the 20th century was, right?
No, I had to Google it.
20th century is the 1900s. We're in the 21st century right now. The 2000s. I figure every century, it's like the hundreds before that is the century. So 1900s is the 20th century, 1800s is the 19th century, and so on and so on. 0 to 100 is the first century. You see what I'm saying?
Got it.
So it wasn't discovered, the extra scripts from it weren't discovered until the 20th century. Now, 1900s. So if we consider that when the Dead Sea Scrolls were popped up, when they found that, that could give us a little leeway to say the end times that we are in it. Now, let me do one more search just to back up something. If that was the case, when were the Dead Sea Scrolls found? The Dead Sea Scrolls were found between 1947 and 1956. So, if it meant the last times, and the book of Daniel was discovered between, or the scripts, extra scripts from Daniel were discovered between 1947 and 1956. Let's give 1956 as the worst case scenario. What did we read? What did Jesus say about when everything of the end time would happen? Thomas? Oh, what would be the span of it? What did he say back in Matthew and Mark?
I can't recall off the top of the head right now.
All right, Charles?
Wasn't in Matthew 24, but of that day, and no one will know the angels haven't done it. The Father
No,
will know.
I said,
You mean
I'm
that one?
gonna say the question again. What did he say about the span of it?
The span, I don't remember then.
All right. That it would happen over the course of one generation. Now, a generation, you can look at that as two different ways. Generation could be up to 120 years. That's one way you could look at it, because it's one generation, one group of living individuals. Or you can look at it as another way, as each generation changes to the next generation over the course of like 30 years. So let's give it the best case scenario time-wise, 120 years for a generation living. That's the most. 1956. That would mean, if that was the case, that we only have till 2000. Well, actually, let me look at this. Can't do math in my head right now. 1956 plus 120. Oh no, plus, not minus. 2076. So if that time frame were to be correct, the world would be ending no later than 2076. If that was correct. So now, do we have confirmation that that is talking about right now, Charles?
No.
And Thomas, if the world doesn't end by 2076, does that make this a contradiction in verse 9?
No.
Exactly. Because as we said, the other thing it could mean is that it's going to be at the last days, which started from Jesus. So it could mean that. So depending on how the interpretation is, we either got about 50 some odd years left, or 40 some odd years, or could be however longer. Different ways to look at it from the context and possibilities. All right, now, does anybody have any comments or questions as we go to the final section? Now be the time to raise your hand. All right. Then I'll be getting into Daniel chapter 12, verses 10 to 13. Again, Daniel chapter 12, verses 10 to 13. Verse 10. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. But go thou thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So we have here, there's going to be a lot of people that get right with God. Many are going to be purified. Well, Thomas, how do people get purified today?
Following 6 steps.
Exactly. obeying that gospel. But the wicked shall do wickedly. So even though there's going to be a bunch of people getting saved, the wicked are still going to be doing wickedness. And none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So none of the wicked individuals are going to understand. Well, look at the way the world talks about Christianity today. They talk about it as fairy tales. They talk about it as if it doesn't make sense. We're not even talking about the story of it, but just the backing for it even. They literally talk about it like they have an inability to understand and comprehend some of the simplest things. All the historical evidence and everything included. They act like they don't understand it. Maybe they don't. But as it goes to point out, and from the time that the daily sacrifices shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Charles, how much is that in years?
Give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it zoom out? 1,290. 107 years and a half. 107.5.
Okay, wait. What you said 107. Say it one more time, Charles.
107.5.
That's not a hundred. Wait, Charles, I don't think you didn't do it right. 1,290 days is not 107 years.
1,290, right? And you said how many
Yeah.
years?
Yeah.
What did you get for your calculation?
290 divided by 365. That's 3.53 years, Charles. How did you get 107? Did you do 36.5 or something? No, that doesn't work. How did you get 107 years? How did you do that?
Oh, wait, that was days. My bad. My bad. That was days. It was 3.5. My bad. I didn't even see that part. That was days. My bad. Yeah, it was 3.5.
What did you do? I got to know how you did that. How did you do that?
Oh, because I didn't do days. My bad.
What do you mean? What did you do?
Days. I just did so what I did was I didn't do 1290 divided by 365. I did 1290 divided by 12. That's how I got that big number instead of the 365. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, I forgot it was days.
Wait, where did the 12 come from?
I'm trying to remember now because I wasn't thinking days. That's how the 12 came from. Just know that.
I
wasn't thinking days.
still don't understand where the 12 came from, bro.
The 12 came from not thinking about days. That's what it came from.
Goodness. Oh, 12 months. That's where you got 12 from. You divided it by
Wasn't even thinking about days. I was not at all.
Funny as heck. Yeah. So 3.5 years is the time. Oh man. 3.5 years. That's how long we're talking about. That's the time that we're looking at. Now we read about that 3.5 years already before in Daniel. And what we were reading about was a similar thing. That at the time after Jesus shows up, that there was going to be about 3.5 years when he's there, where he's dealing with things, preaching and teaching, and people are learning and things are going on. We had that 3.5 years again stated. So at the end of the end times, at the last portion of it, there's going to be 3.5 years where people are dealing with testing, where they're proving whether or not they're going to follow and all that. That's what we're dealing with. Now, but as it pointed out, but go thou thy way till the end be, talking to Daniel, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. So you're going to go ahead and rest, and you're going to be coming back in what you've earned or what you've received at the end of those days. All right. Now, with all that in mind, does anybody have any more comments or questions before we pray it out? Charles, I'm still stuck on the 12. All right. I'll go ahead and pray us out. Everybody bow your heads. Father, thank you for this time that you've given us to be able to read your word, to be able to enjoy the moment and everything that you have for us. We wouldn't be who we are and we wouldn't have what we have if not for everything that you've given to us. And as we learn from Daniel and from what you've shown, if it does so happen to be before 2076 that this is over, we just pray, God, that Charles, Thomas, and I will be here, will be faithful, and be part of the ones that are reaching many for salvation. And if it should be longer beyond that, and that's not the context of the most, that we just continue to grow as long as you have us here, not just to learn for ourselves, but when the time comes when you've established us, to give us opportunities and the ability to reach more souls. First, we got to make sure we're right. In your son's holy and precious name, Jesus Christ Yeshua. Amen.
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 All right, everybody. Just remember, when you have to figure out how many days, remember to divide by 12, not 365.
Funny.
No, just playing. But in actuality, one more time so that everybody knows, today's Bible listening is 2nd Chronicles chapter 34 to Ezra chapter 10. All right, everybody got that?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Have a wonderful night.